Buonasera. Come ogni volta Fabio mi dice tu devi dare il benvenuto e io vi do il benvenuto. Dopodiché mi dice non dir più niente che ci penso io. Per cui vi do il benvenuto. Adesso mi siedo curioso di capire cosa succede questa sera. Passo subito la parola al mio collega Fabio Costantini che ha organizzato tutto ciò e con curiosità lo ascolto, oltre dopo aver ascoltato i nostri ospiti. Ho fatto bene il mio compito? Bravissimo!
Buonasera a tutti, grazie mille Marco che non mi faciliti mai benissimo il compito, che poi gli dico cose completamente diverse ma lui torna sempre sul tema analogo. Bentrovati, ben arrivati ai Future Talk. In realtà benvenuti a chi per la prima volta sperimenta questo format, bentornati, che ci sono tanti volti che stanno tornando in tutte le tappe. L'ultima l'abbiamo avuta lo scorso 5 aprile con Julian Sciarca e abbiamo parlato un po' di futuro, quindi la missione della giornata è veramente ritagliarsi. Da un lato un po' una risorsa preziosa per tutti, quindi grazie per essere venuti, che è il tempo, e provare a parlare di futuro e quindi avere veramente un'oretta e mezza e noi cerchiamo di scegliere delle tematiche evocative. Il futuro poi impone, con Julian abbiamo parlato di trasformazione digitale, avevamo parlato di umanesimo, del ruolo che l'Europa può giocare tra est e ovest del mondo, e ne abbiamo parlato con ottimismo partendo poi proprio dalla storia di Julian. E avevamo dato anche una parola chiave, che un po' sono le parole che connotano il percorso che stiamo facendo, e la parola che era emersa come parola chiave era audacia. Audacia come coraggio di esporsi. Poi nel pensare alle tappe a seguire, agli argomenti, un altro dei temi che ci è venuto in modo diciamo di ispirazione è dire pensare al futuro impone comunque di guardare sempre avanti e all'orizzonte, al mondo che evolve, ma lo si può fare sia cercando tematiche sfidanti, ma guardare anche un po' al mondo che avanza, girando un po' lo sguardo indietro, quindi cercando anche di guardare non necessariamente a dinamiche lontane. Ed è per questo che in realtà nella serata di oggi abbiamo pensato di parlare come parola chiave di una parola che ha a che fare un po' all'evoluzione della società, che deve e dovrà essere sempre più inclusiva, e quindi inclusione è il tema trattato, e inclusione diciamo che è una parola anche abbastanza, mette d'accordo tutti tendenzialmente, è una parola che abbraccia è una parola anche estremamente difficile. Di inclusione si parla adesso, ora più che mai, e per fortuna molto all'interno delle aziende e delle organizzazioni. Si parla di inclusione, si definiscono processi, c'è una sensibilizzazione forte a questo tipo di cultura, ma quello che noi abbiamo pensato di fare è anche di scendere di un ulteriore livello, diciamo così. Scendere di un ulteriore livello vuol dire provare a parlare di inclusione andando un po' più verso le origini della parola e pensare alla tematica dell'inclusione come un qualcosa che riguarda tendenzialmente la società, ma che riguarda anche un po' il dire in questa serata osserviamoci e guardiamoci tra di noi, e non ci sono grandi diversità. La pongo lì come domanda. E un altro punto, e qui scendo di un ulteriore livello, è quello di avere certezza che siamo tutti convinti, non solo pensiamo, abbiamo la certezza di essere cresciuti in una cultura che non è razzista, in una cultura che è inclusiva, ma la verità è che il modello storico che si tramanda da secoli è un modello storico che in realtà ha delle basi razziste, quindi anche le neuroscienze ci insegnano che è impossibile non aver radicato quel mindset che per esempio si manifesta nella paura, no? Nella paura del diverso che si avvicina. Quindi il modello nel quale siamo cresciuti è di fatto da sempre il modello bianco e tendenzialmente abbiamo anche dato per verità assolute quelle che sono un po' delle falsità storiche. Faccio un esempio che è un classico: nella storia non vengono mai narrati i faraoni neri o i faraoni donne, per intenderci, no? Poi in realtà non veniva considerata la possibilità dagli storici, che poi invece è stata accertata come verità, e quindi i faraoni nubiani, le mini piramidi, ma in realtà raramente si vanno a visitare, o alle esperienze che ci sono intorno, e c'è veramente capitoli di storia. Quindi concetti come il bianchismo, se oggi lo cito, in realtà non evocano nulla nella nostra società europea, ma esistono mondi dove il concetto del bianchismo è un concetto molto forte e potente, quindi l'angolazione e i punti di vista spostano molto i confini della parola inclusione. E anche qui un esempio che è un po' dei giorni nostri: noi si parla tantissimo di salary gap tra genere, tra uomini e donne. Ci sono mondi che in realtà non sono mondi lontani, e non sto parlando neanche di mondi superati, nei quali si guarda al salary gap tra l'uomo nero e la donna. Quindi una questione un po' di prospettive, che però pongono la base di ragionamento e anche un po' di costruzione di un'inclusione che è l'opportunità di affrancarci per guardare il mondo che avanza e per tornare alla parola chiave, a una società che deve essere inclusiva. Quindi di fatto da qui è l'incipit di tutte le disuguaglianze. E quindi tentiamo un po' di allargare i confini, e cerchiamo di farlo veramente con attenzione e con delle storie, e cerchiamo di farlo anche immaginando che dobbiamo metterci molto in ascolto, e proviamo a metterci anche in un ascolto che magari è meno comodo del solito, ma che noi auspichiamo possa essere poi assolutamente fondante per garantirci questo tipo di attenzione e di guardare al futuro con questi confini che devono poter essere sempre più presidiati. Per farlo lo faremo con degli ospiti, e quindi tra 2 secondi chiamerò poi Pablo Trincia, podcaster e giornalista, per chi non lo conoscesse, sulle piattaforme Spotify, sui podcast ormai sono diventati veramente super famosi. Lo faremo con Djamila Ribeiro, che è una filosofa e una attivista. L'abbiamo fortemente voluta proprio per rappresentare questo tema, è arrivata per noi dal Brasile, e lei si è presa proprio una responsabilità importante, che è quella di dare voce a chi non è stato incluso, ma si è presa una responsabilità più grande, più forte, cioè di farlo partendo da se stessa, partendo dalla sua storia che poi è diventata un pensiero che poi è diventato un linguaggio, e il linguaggio che oggi è diventato un movimento. Quindi Pablo, dove sei? Perché io poi gli occhiali da vista, io non vedo nulla. Lascio la parola a Pablo, vi ringrazio e ci vediamo per le conclusioni.
Grazie Fabio. Buonasera. Dunque, per introdurre Djamila Ribeiro, penso che non ci sia niente di meglio di un testo personale, e abbiamo scelto assieme a lei una lettera bellissima che Djamila ha scritto a sua nonna Antonia. A 45 anni mi tocca mettere gli occhiali, Ho resistito. Cara nonna Antonia, i ricordi che ho di te sanno di mango verde e torta alla zucca. Hanno il profumo di fagioli e di cena alle 6 del pomeriggio. Addolcivi la mia bocca e mi benedicevi l'anima. Prega, che ti passa? Oppure, questa bimba è affamata, datele quello che le va di mangiare. Amavo passare le vacanze a casa tua, sentire l'amore nella sua migliore dimensione. Conservo nella memoria le carezze, le sgridate di mia madre quando litigavamo, l'odore di amasterol nei capelli, le paghette che mi davi di nascosto, le passeggiate con lo zio Edson. Dato che i miei genitori non avevano la macchina, una delle mie più grandi gioie era sapere che lo zio Edson stava venendo a prendermi a Santos per trascorrere le vacanze con te a Piracicaba. A casa tua veniva solo chi veniva promosso con buoni voti. Io venivo spesso da sola, senza Denis, Elder e Dara, cosa che confesso adoravo, perché senza i miei fratelli vicino potevo averti tutta per me. Dato che abitavo in un appartamento, adoravo giocare a casa tua, nonna, correre in cortile, salire sugli alberi, scappare dai miei cugini che mi infilavano cicale nelle tasche per farmi paura. Smettetela di spaventare vostra cugina, dicevi. Ammiravo il tuo coraggio nell'accendere una fiaccola per bruciare il nido che le vespe si ostinavano a costruire nell'entrata di casa tua, nel quartiere di Saudimas. Voglio proprio vedere quanto sarai dispiaciuta quando una di quelle ti pungerà, dicevi quando mi lamentavo per la morte degli insetti. E infatti, durante una di quelle vacanze con te, venni punta per la prima volta da un'ape. Tornai a casa piangendo e urlando e tu che gridavi «Che è successo, bambina?» Fu una vera impresa riuscire a togliere il pungiglione. Poi mi spalmasti un tuo miscuglio di erbe che fece sgonfiare rapidamente il mio braccio ed ecco che tornai di nuovo a correre per strada. Ricordo le uscite al supermercato dove potevo comprare tutto ciò che volevo. «La mia nipote di Santos è qui!» dicevi alle vicine mentre andavi a comprare il pane. Eri così orgogliosa, così emozionata, non riuscivi neanche a sgridarmi a dovere. Una volta, quando ero adolescente, mia madre mi beccò a fumare e ne fece un grande dramma. Risposi, anche tu fumi, mamma? E donna Irani non poté controbattere, cosa rara, lo sai bene. Una delle scuse che raccattò fu quella di dire che se tu fossi stata ancora se tu fossi stata ancora in vita, mi avresti fatto una sfuriata. È chiaro che non ti avrebbe fatto piacere sapere che fumavo, ma sapevo che mi avresti semplicemente detto di non farlo più. Non mi piaceva fumare, volevo solo seguire le mode delle sigarette a gusto di cannella. Mi ricordo anche dei tuoi abbracci caldi e amorosi, delle tue mani svelte che benedicevano il mio corpo mentre sussurravi preghiere quasi incomprensibili. Quelle mani che benedicevano erano le stesse che preparavano cibo abbondante e appetitoso la domenica. Che nostalgia delle tue belle mani, mani che hanno storie e calli, ma morbide nell'accarezzare e intrecciare i miei capelli. Oggi cerco di capire il significato di un certo mistero che ti avvolgeva. Le storie della buonanotte che mi raccontavi, così dolci e delicate, contrastavano con quelle che mia madre mi raccontava su di te, storie che parlavano di una donna arrabbiata che picchiava i figli, lanciava tutto quello che aveva davanti a sé. Quando venivi a Santos per farci visita, nell'attesa quasi non riuscivo a dormire, tanto ero agitata. Com'era bello averti a casa per coccolarci. Nella valigia portavi sempre dei regali per i nipoti, facevi dolci deliziosi per tutti, ti adoperavi affinché nessuno litigasse. La cosa che mi piaceva di più era averti con me mentre mi facevi le trecce ai capelli. Piangevo ogni volta che ripartivi e ancora oggi le partenze sono difficili per me. Non sono mai riuscita a chiederti com'è stato crescere 7 figli con mio nonno, com'è stato essere la madre di Edna, di Joao, di José Roberto, di Erani Benedita, di Avelino, di Edson e di Edmilson. Com'è stato essere la moglie di José dos Santos. Come ti sei sentita nel costruire una buona casa dopo una vita intera passata a lavorare fuori, nelle case degli altri. Com'è stato essere la matriarca di una delle poche famiglie nere di Saudimas, quartiere che sarebbe poi diventato di classe media. Come affrontavi il razzismo? Sarà che ci pensavi o sei stata forzata a naturalizzarlo? Non ho avuto il tempo di chiederti nulla di tutto questo. Quali erano i tuoi sogni, le tue paure? Ci hai lasciato a 68 anni, con ancora tanto da vivere. E questa era la nonna di Djamila Ribeiro ed è la persona che le ha trasmesso la magia, perché sembra quasi un personaggio della letteratura sudamericana, e che le ha dato questo imprinting, questo forte imprinting emotivo. Una nonna che Djamila ci ha raccontato, appunto, lavorava nelle case degli altri, quindi era una domestica, anche la mamma, sua figlia, la mamma di Djamila sarebbe poi diventata una domestica, avrebbe lavorato nelle case degli altri. E la cosa che fa impressione se nate in Brasile e se entrate nelle case dei ricchi, negli appartamenti a San Paolo è una città che ha dei palazzi giganteschi, dei grattacieli di decine di piani, e vedere che sono proprio costruiti, sono progettati con una stanza senza finestre attaccata alla cucina, che noi utilizzeremo come sgabuzzino, ma che loro danno ai domestici. È il mondo, è la casa dei domestici, e dove i domestici trascorrono le ore in cui non lavorano invece in cucina o in giro per la casa. Ed è ovviamente sono delle prigioni quasi, delle prigioni sociali che sua nonna e sua mamma hanno purtroppo frequentato, che hanno dato anche a lei lo sguardo sui più poveri, sulle classi più povere, sulle classi più emarginate. Anche se, come racconta la stessa Djamila, la persona che le darà questa forte spinta a occuparsi del sociale, a occuparsi degli emarginati, dei più deboli, è suo papà, Joachim, che è stato un lavoratore del porto di San Paolo, è stato un attivista, uno che si è battuto per i diritti sia delle persone meno abbienti e delle persone nere, dei neri in Brasile, che sono quelli proprio ancora più emarginati, e che è l'uomo che le ha insegnato delle cose bellissime, una tra tutte. Ha insegnato a lei e a sua sorella a cercarsi un uomo giusto che fosse meglio del marito che era stato lui. E credo che sia un insegnamento molto coraggioso da parte di un padre, una missione molto coraggiosa da parte di un padre. E che quando Djamila da piccola correva a piedi nudi in giro per il cortile, tantissimi bambini brasiliani corrono a piedi nudi, e si era ferita con un caco di vidro. Caco di vidro è un pezzo di una scheggia di vetro. Era corso a estrargliela, l'aveva fatta sedere, con una pinzetta cercava di estrarla, ma il caco di vidro, questo pezzettino di vetro era molto piccolo e quindi lei urlava, e allora il padre aveva chiamato i fratelli intorno a lei e ogni volta che lei urlava tutti quanti urlavano assieme a lei, cosa che le aveva poi ovviamente fatto ridere e aveva trasformato un'esperienza di dolore in un'esperienza, in un ricordo, come dire, di un momento non goliardico, ma una bella nostalgia, un bel ricordo. E Djamila dice: è stato quello che mi ha insegnato a empatizzare con il dolore degli altri. Condividere il dolore degli altri, per empatizzare il dolore degli altri lo devi condividere, devi avere gli altri che urlano insieme a te. E quindi questo, il padre e la nonna, sono state determinanti, figure determinanti per la sua crescita e per la meravigliosa scrittrice che poi è diventata attivista e filosofa. Ladies and gentlemen, Djamila Ribeiro.
Thank you so much for your beautiful presentation, Pablo. Thank you. Good evening to all. I'm very glad to be here tonight. Thank you, Elisa, for the invitation. It's the first time that I am in a company having this kind of conversation outside Brazil. In Brazil, I do it a lot. And I'm very glad to be here tonight to talk to you. I prepared a presentation because I think it's easier. But also it's important to say that I'm talking as a Brazilian woman, and in Brazil there is an important intellectual production on racism. There is an important Black movement also in Brazil, and I like to present this other Brazil because usually people have a very limited vision about Brazil. When I travel a lot because most of my books are translated to other languages, to French, German, Italian, Spanish. And next year, I will have my English translation finally by Yale University Press. And when I travel and I say that I'm a Brazilian, usually people, oh, Brazil, wow, samba, Rio de Janeiro. And yes, but Brazil, it's a huge country, 200 million people. Brazil is like a continent. There is a lot of people in Brazil doing incredible work. I know that most of these things are not being shown here, but there are. And I like to present this other Brazil, and the people who works, who fight, who try to think a better world. And this woman, Lélia Gonzalez, she was one of these people. She has already passed away, but she was a very important intellectual in Brazil. And I like this quote And when she says, the risk we run here is all that is implied in the act of speaking. You have been spoken about, infantilized. An infant is someone who cannot speak. A child is someone who can only speak through someone else because adults speak on their behalf. Precisely because of this infantilization, we are taking back our own speech in this work. That is, what has been assumed to be a garbage is talking back, and it's about time. End of quote. And I think this quote is very powerful because Brazil, I know that historically the idea that the Brazil government sold abroad is that Brazil is a very nice country, an integrated country, that everybody lives together, but it's not true, actually. Brazil was the last country in America to end slavery, and it's a very racist and violent country for Black and indigenous people. This was Lélia Gonzalez. I like always to put the photograph because usually people don't think that a woman like her was a PhD in philosophy, was a professor in an important university in Rio de Janeiro. And Lélia was a very important reference to us to the way to think new possibilities of existence instead of only these stereotypes or point of views that legitimate a stereotype vision on Black women. That's why I decided to start with this myth of the universal woman, because I think, of course, it's important to talk about gender, race, and other kind of identities, for sure. But as a Black woman, for us, it's important to present that there are different possibilities of being a woman. So in Brazil, when I do this kind of work with some companies, sometimes people say to me, oh, but here in our company, there is a diversity policy, 50% of the workers are women. We have a very important policy here. And I say, but how many of them are Black? In a country that Black women represent 28% of the population. And we are the majority of the population. So that's why I think it's important to talk about intersectionality, the different possibilities of being. We can be a Black woman, a white woman, a lesbian woman. You can be an indigenous woman. You can be an immigrant. You can be a Black man. So how to face this universal idea that sometimes we legitimate and we deny differences, and differences are not bad, differences are good. We are all different here. I am different from you, you are different from me, and I think it's also important to discuss that everybody's different from each other, to not legitimate an idea that, a paradigm that you are different from me, or that diversity is to put all different people together. But who are different? White people are different from Black people, and Black people are different from white people. It's also important. Foi? Foi. Agora foi. So who is different from each other? So diversity is not a room that you put everybody that is different, because everybody is different from each other. This paradigm, it's needed to be confronted. And also, it's important to reflect about this, we are all different, but there are different possibilities of being, and how it's important to name it. So I'm going to read. The contributions of Black feminists as a whole started to question the universal subject, assumed to be white, European, male, as well as to put in check the universalization of woman as a category. If, on the one hand, Simone de Beauvoir, in her work, The Second Sex, when thinking about the condition of woman, defined her as being the other in relation to man, that is, one that's not thought of in itself, but in function of man, Grada Quilomba, interdisciplinary thinker based in Germany, sophisticates the analysis to think of black women as the other, since he is the double antithesis of whiteness and masculinity. And I quote Grada Quilomba. Because they are neither white nor male, black women occupy a very difficult position in white supremacist society. We represent a kind of double deficiency, a double alterity, since we are the antithesis of both, whiteness and masculinity. In this scheme, the black woman can only be the other, and never herself. White women have an oscillating status both as themselves as the other of the white man, since they are white but not men. Black men play the role of opponents of white men as they are possible competitors in the conquest of white women, since they are men but not white. Black women, however, are neither white nor men, and they function as the other of the other. End of the quote. And I like this quote because in the feminist theory for a long time, the feminist was arguing that we are all women, but not naming that are different possibilities of being a woman. As a black woman in my country, that was the last country in America to end slavery, it means that most of black women in Brazil, after the slavery time, because the Brazil state didn't create any kind of reparation policies, most of these women, they left the condition of slavery to be domestic work. And this cycle was being repeated and repeated and repeated. I am the first person in my family to go to university. I had the possibility to break this cycle because of public policy in terms of education. I'm the first person in my family. Then my daughter, I have an 18-year-old daughter. Today she wants to study math in the United States. She's trying a scholarship there because her mother had the possibility to study. So the importance of breaking cycles, and it's not because I'm a genius. Sometimes I think I am, but it's because I had the opportunity to study. So it's not a debate about capacity, because capacity everybody has. It's a debate about opportunities, the opportunities that are not the same. So my mom, it was not her dream to be a domestic worker. She didn't have any kind of choice in her life. She had to. So, but I was born in a family that both my parents knew that education was a key to be able to transcend our reality. So my father, he was very, very serious about that. He was a worker in the port. He didn't have the opportunity to study in a formal way, but he was very intelligent, very cultured. He used to read to us. I played chess since I was 6 years old. I got some medals in championships because my father knew it was important to study. But imagine how people were very surprised when I was in this kind of spaces. And most of the times, I was only the black child there. And people, do you play chess? So for me, it was not just, I'm going there to that championship. I had to prove that I deserved to be there because everybody was looking at me like, she shouldn't be here. So when you come from this kind of reality, you have to deal all the time with this kind of questions. And I remember that in 2018, I was going to Germany. I was invited by Goethe University for a program of visiting professor. And I remember that I was there in Brazil waiting for the flight. And an old lady, she was looking at me like, what this girl is doing here? And in Brazil, I don't know if you have been in Brazil before, but in Brazil, people, they don't care to bother you. So they don't know you. But she was so curious about what I was doing there. And she came to me, oh, are you going to travel? And I was there in the airport waiting for the flight. And I just said, we're going to Germany. Yes. Oh, me too. And I said, oh, great. What are you going to do in Germany? Are you going to dance? And I answered, no, because are you going? And she was very offended because I asked that question to her. But I didn't say to her what I was going to do because, yes, be curious about that. But I was going to a university. A university invited me to go there. But for that lady, she would never imagine that a person like me was going to Germany to teach. So we needed to think why do you think like that? Why do you think like that? Why, when I was just a little kid, a little child, people were very surprised about the fact that I was there to play chess. And how all these things impact the way we see ourselves. How it impacted my life for a long time, my self-esteem, the way I had to transcend all these limited visions. So it's important to white people, for people who do not have this kind of experiences, to understand what is that, because we live in relation. So racism is not only a problem of black people, sexism is not only a problem of women, because we are in relations. We live in a society that all these groups are present. So it's important that all societies reflect on that to understand what it means, to understand their power to change things. It's not only just a task for who are the ones who are oppressed. It's a task for that people who have the power to change things. And to ask the question, I'm going to legitimate this place of pain, this place of oppression, or I'm going to be a person who will transform that. So this is something that everybody needed to be in the same page. So that's why I like to bring this kind of reflection. And Grada Quilomba, she is from Portugal, but she lives in Berlin for a long time. Here, I decided to bring the myth of racial democracy in Brazil because I think it's very similar here in Italy. This denial of racism in Brazil for a long time. People in Brazil, the state of Brazil denied racism. No, racism in Brazil? No, only United States or South Africa. Here in Brazil, everybody's mixed, everybody live together, everybody dance samba, and that's it. And for a long time, this was the image that people abroad had from Brazil. But actually, is not true. So on top of the silence, Brazil, the country of soccer and samba, exported the image in which white and black people coexisted harmoniously, drinking beer on the table and playing the cavaquinho while the mulatto woman danced the samba happily. This romanticization of race relations in Brazil, discussed in the work Casagrande Senzala, The Master and the Slaves, by the Brazilian sociologist Gilberto Freire, was called myth of racial democracy. And it was a problem in Brazil because for a long time, white people in Brazil was saying, no, there is no racism, we are not racist. But the thing is, the denial of racism was a strategic tool to not confront racism. Because if there is no racism, why do you need a policy to confront that? Why do you need to create public policies? Why do you need to talk about that? And it was very damaging for Brazil because the black movement in Brazil had to struggle for a long time to make the Brazil state recognize racism, to create public policy to confront racism. And also, a lot of people in Brazil, they didn't have awareness about that because of this myth that was studied in university and in schools. When I was a kid, this is the story that they told me in schools. But my father was an activist. That's why I had the access to the truth since I was a little girl. So the denial of racism is a way to maintain racism. And it's not individual discussions. I'm not racist. It's not about that. It's about a structure. Because a white person, he or she can think that he or she is not racist, but this is not the question. The question is the structure that oppress people based on their race or based on their sex. This is the issue. I have a lot of white friends and good friends, and I say, yes, you cannot think you are racist, but you are benefited by a system because you are white. So this is the question that you needed to ask, and not if this person is racist or not. I think it's very important to understand the system and to understand the structure. No livro, in a book, As Ambiguidades do Racismo Brasileira, The Ambiguities of Brazilian Racism, the great intellectual Kabengele Munanga summarizes the power of the myth. Like all myth, it works as a belief, a true reality, an order. Hence, the difficulty in getting any Brazilian to confess to racism. And I quote, "The myth proclaimed in Brazil a racial paradise where relations between white and black people, white people and indigenous people, etc., are harmonious, that is, without prejudice and without discrimination, except for socioeconomic order, which affects all Brazilians and is not based on skin color. In order to consolidate and become increasingly stronger, the myth manipulates some facts evidenced in the reality of a Brazilian society, such as miscegenation, mythical personality, and symbols of black cultural resistance in the country. It will say that there are a mestizo people, that is, neither white, neither black, neither indigenous, a new Brazilian race, a mestizo race. Who will discriminate against whom if you are all mestizos? So this was the idea that for a long time in Brazil, they imposed it. And it was very difficult to raise awareness on this debate. Today, no. Today in Brazil, the things changed. This kind of discussions is in the public debate, but for a long time. So I decided to present because how it is damaged to deny or to create a romantic idea about that. We needed to name in order to be able to confront. It's okay, everybody? Okay? Munanga's brilliant synthesis reveals the sophistication of this myth so damaging to race relations in Brazil. Gonzalez, from a black feminist perspective on this myth, states in Racismo e Sexismo na Cultura Brasileira, Racism and Sexism in Brazilian Culture. Like every myth that of racial democracy, hides something beyond what it shows. In a first approximation, we find that it exercises its symbolic violence in a special way on black women. For the other side of carnival, deification takes place in this woman's daily life at the moment in when she becomes a maid. That's where the guilt engendered by his deification is exercised with strong charges of aggression. It's also there that's verified that the terms mulatto woman and maid are attributions of the same subject. And I like this quote because in the carnival season in Brazil, oh, carnival, and people in Brazil, and the TV show, after the day after carnival, black people don't exist anymore. So I like this definition because terms mulatto woman and maid are attributions of the same subject and how in Brazil they deal with it. Now, in face of a racial and gender exclusion, what your company can do. Of course, I brought the contest in Brazil because I'm in Brazil. I don't understand too much the contest in Italy. I'm studying about that. But in all this time I came here, I have 3 books translated to Italian. I felt how it's still a hard conversation. And I think it's similar to Brazil in a way that people deny racism. Or we are not going to talk about that. Italy is not responsible for colonization. You have to talk about other issues. So I felt like in Brazil, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago, some kind of, I don't know, uncomfortable thing. And I think it's important to accept this feeling of uncomfortable things. Because today here I'm bringing uncomfortable truths. It is important to embrace that, because there is no change when you think that everything is good or everything is fine. So sometimes in Brazil, after a talk, people approach me and say, oh, I didn't like what he said, I felt uncomfortable, and I answer, good. Because I think it's important, because you all here needed to feel uncomfortable, because what we're talking about is not a good thing. So we needed to feel uncomfortable to be able to do something to change. And this feeling is necessary for the change. So what can you do when you understand that people, they don't have the same kind of opportunities? What can we do when you know that the imposition of sexism in our societies put women in a very particular situations? What can you do when you know that when we are mothers, sometimes it means that we are not going to get a promotion in our jobs? A man can have 20 children. Nobody will ask them, are you sure that you are going to be able to manage your personal and professional life? But a woman with one child, are you sure? I don't know. In this job, you have to travel too much. I think it's better to give the promotion to, I don't know, to Nicola. So these are questions that we need to make. But until today, as far as I know, we do not get pregnant alone, as far as I know. So we need a man to get pregnant. So why these impositions is about women? You needed to ask these questions instead of naturalize, oh, but it's like the way it is. In Brazil, slavery was legal. It not means that it was not immoral. It was legal for a long time. That's why Brazil was the last country in America to end slavery, because it was legal. But it was violent. It was immoral. So these kind of questions are necessary to ask to change. So what company can do when you understand all these context? Meaning of diversity. The concept, I am quoting Adilson Moreira, who is a very important intellectual in Brazil. The concept of diversity is based on the premise that pluralism is a relevant reference for the design of institutional policies. Identity threats constructed or attributed to certain social segments determine the social experience of their members. And these characteristics are often used to designate the place they can occupy. A mechanism responsible for the reproduction of asymmetrical power relations. So diversity is about asymmetrical power relations. It's not about put everybody different in a room. Thus, the notion of diversity as an institutional value refers to collectivities that have a specific social experience due to stratification process. It does not intend to suggest or assert essential identities, but recognize that distinct cultural experience functioning differently social. So it's not about to say that, oh, you have to hire women because women think different. It's about, yes, the experiences that women have to deal in a daily basis maybe can help this company to think forward or to raise the awareness to build different types of point of view because of these experiences. It's not an essentialist discussion, but it's a discussion that, yes, sometimes in Brazil there are some companies that they do the ad in TV, and people in Brazil start to criticize because it was racist or sexist, and I think there was not any woman in this team to see that this ad was not okay. And this company lost money after to try to deal with that crisis because they didn't have diversity team. It's about the experiences, not about being an essential discussion. Diversity in work environment, I started about when I was in Norway. I promise it will be a short story. I was invited by by Norway, the government, in 2017 to go to Norway to know the public policies in terms of gender equality. And it was a very good experience because Norway is very cold. Otherwise, maybe I was living there with my daughter because they have very important public policies. Like it's not the, for a parent, for example, the parents leave. The man or the woman can stay at home for a year. The man or the woman. In Brazil, it's not a parent leave, it's a mother leave, the name. So what the Brazilian states are telling us that you women have to stay at home, and it's 4 months leave. It's such a short time to stay at home. So in our, no, it's a parenting leave. And they have a policy there that's very interesting. They have a policy of quota for women. In all national companies in Norway, there is a quota of 40% for women in leadership positions, 40%. And I was very curious about this policy, and I decided to interview the politician who created that policy, and it was a man from the Conservative Party. And I asked him, why, sir, why did you decide to establish this policy? And he answered to me, well, Djamila, here in Norway, women exist. And if these women are not in this kind of leadership position, it's a problem of our societies. So for me, it was important to understand the context that was creating difficult for these women to get in these positions. Otherwise, we only would hire the man who you play golf with. And this answer seems to be simple, but it's very profound. Because this man who plays golf with this politician, he lives in an environment that only one type of man goes there, and you think that only these people like you are able to get this kind of position. Because you naturalize that everybody have the same opportunities. You naturalize that the rest of the society have this kind of opportunities, or you naturalize your vision of the world. Because you only live with people like you only read people like you. You do not think outside some box. And when you read other thinkers, people from other countries, people who have other experiences, your life will be richer in terms of knowledge, in terms of the way you understand the society. So this man, as a politician, as a public man, he understood his responsibility in creating opportunities, because he knew that women were not there in that positions because they were not intelligent enough or because they are not capable to be there, but because there was a position of sexism and these women didn't have the same opportunity. And this policy in Norway is very successful policy. And the argument that they use in Norway is the economic argument. They don't use the social responsibility argument. For them is, when you have more women working in this kind of position, it's better for the economy of the country. And a lot of researchers about diversity, they say that it's more important in an economical way for the companies, for public institutions, for societies, when we have more people from different backgrounds working together. It's not a debate about charity, because actually it is important for the economy of these places. And this story, I like this story because, you know, a guy in Norway, a politician from the Conservative Party, understood the importance to create a diversity policy to include women in the society. Why does diversity matter? We can answer in two ways, economically and ethically. Economically, because diversity improves company results. And also I quote Adilson Moreira. Those authors who write on the subject claim that diversity increases competitiveness because it improves the efficiency of companies. It represents an important advantage as it allows institutions to respond to the interests of different groups in the most appropriate way possible. It's believed that a diversity staff improves the performance of the institution by increasing the ability to analyze and solve problems. These studies demonstrate that the perspectives brought by people from different social backgrounds and with different experiences make the capacity of institutional analysis of dirt problem solving superior to that of those companies whose staffs are uniform. Companies that create a diversified workforce create means for the exchange of new ideas to increase, which is particularly desirable in a market in which minority groups have increasing persuasion power. End of the quote, and I think its quote is amazing. And ethically, because it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to quote Soli Carneiro, who is a very important Black feminist in Brazil. And she says, we want to be co-responsible for promoting development in political, social, and economic terms. You want to win the right to offer development with our intelligence, our physical strength, our cultural heritage, our spiritual values, our creativity, our extraordinary capacity for resistance. So there is these two arguments, ethically and economically. So again, how companies can be part of it? Hiring, training, development is a very good start, but watch out with the lonely Black person trap. I like this, and I am going to quote myself, sorry, but I think it's a very good quote. Whiteness has developed methods of maintaining what would be politically correct in relation to the racial agenda and the reservation of space for the lonely Black person, which is certainly one of its most classic strategies. It is argued as follows. Look, we are not racist. We have the guy who is Black working in such a department, and he even loves working here, doesn't he really? And the guy, maybe to keep his job, maybe because he learned to play the company's speech, agrees. However, Black people are not all the same, and the guy, as good as he is, cannot represent all Black people. In this way, it's necessary to break with the strategy of the lonely Black person. It's not enough to have one Black person to consider that a certain space of power has been sanitized against racism. And in Brazil, it's very common. And I was the lonely Black person for a long time in my life when I decided to study philosophy, for example. I was the only Black woman in my class. I was the only Black woman in these. I'm the first Black woman to be in the Academy of Writers in Brazil. I'm the first, and I'm tired to be the first. And it's very difficult to be alone when you look around and you don't see people like you. Or you see people like you serving. They are not in the space, participating of the space like you. And it can be very difficult to be. And it's not diversity when you have just one person there or one woman, one immigrant person. It's important to talk about proportion as well and not to reinforce this idea of one, this or that. Permanence is also important, so be aware of recreational racism, or recreational sexism, or recreational homophobia. This concept was developed by Professor Adilson Moreira, when he analyzed the labor rights lawsuits about racism in workplace. He's from law school. He was able to identify how racism based on jokes and on the use of humor is a strategic tool to maintain a hostile environment without using any explicit hateful comments, making it very difficult for Black people to remain. It's strategic because after the dismissal of the Black person, the space is occupied by a white person maintaining racial hegemony with the addition of the speech. We even tried to hire him, but the guy had no sense of humor. So I don't know here in Italy, but in Brazil, it's very naturalized, these kind of jokes. And people say, oh, but it's just a joke. What are you mad about it? For a long time in Brazil. That's why the work of Adilson Moreira was very important in Brazil, because now the public debate changed because of his book and also influenced the creation of laws in Brazil on that because of this work. And I'm very glad to say that I published this book in my collection because in Brazil I run a book still. I publish Black authors in Brazil. One of them is here today. The professor, Luis, he wrote a book about hate speech on social media. And his book is being translated to Italian, so it will be available next year. So I think it's very important to know the work of this important intellectual that is honoring me with his presence today. So Adilson Moreira, he was very important to frame this kind of discussion in Brazil. So yes, now you have a public policy, we are hiring people from different backgrounds, but how that environment will treat that people? It cannot be a hostile environment because otherwise these people, they will not want to stay. And it is very difficult to work in a place that people do not respect who you are. Or all the time you have to prove that you deserve to be there. So in Brazil, I work with some companies and I say, you have to work. It's a process. It's not only about in the Women's Day. You have to create a culture of discussion on sexism in this place, in this company, and I work with some companies because otherwise they don't know how to deal with this hostile environment. And it is very important to prepare people who work in that place to understand and respect the difference. As a fundamental part of society, companies have the means and the opportunity to make a difference, promote a transformation that will benefit all people. And I truly believe that it's not only a task for the public institutions. I think that private institutions have important power to change the society. People change institutions. So it's important to change people mindset, to these people be able to change the environment, to change the places that they are or they belong. Thank you so much.
Obrigado, Djamila.
De nada.
Voglio chiudere con la seconda parte di questa bellissima lettera alla nonna, Antonia. Ci hai lasciato a 68 anni, con ancora tanto da vivere. Mia madre sarebbe morta 8 anni dopo, ancora più giovane di te, a 51 anni e 23 giorni. Ho evitato questa conversazione per molto tempo. Confesso che i lutti successivi, mio padre morì 1 anno dopo mia madre, mi hanno fatto agire quasi automaticamente. La ferita che sanguina ora è vecchia, è una ferita che è stata aperta anni fa e che non si è cicatrizzata. E ogni volta che sento un dolore simile, anche se proviene da situazioni diverse, il taglio comincia a sanguinare di nuovo e molto. Ma ora mi sento pronta, nonna. La mia difficoltà nell'accettare la tristezza mi disorientava. Solo dopo un po' di tempo piansi per la morte dei miei genitori. Ricordo che un giorno passò in radio alla Clairefontaine e scoppiai a piangere. I versi "Da molto tempo ti amo, mai ti dimenticherò" svegliarono in me tutte le lacrime trattenute, tutto l'amore che aveva bisogno di essere filtrato da acque salate. Non avrei mai dimenticato i miei amori più grandi, ma avevo bisogno di una canzone cantata con dolcezza per ricordarmi che hanno bisogno di essere immortalati senza dolore in eccesso. Visto che lo porteremo per sempre con noi, questo dolore non può farci affondare e dimenticare i ricordi felici. Per non sottrarsi a un piccolo sorriso quando ci troviamo a ripetere quello che condannavamo nei nostri genitori, per poter ridere dei giorni in cui scampavamo dalle botte, per poter riprendere il libro di ricette ogni volta che ci assale quella nostalgia di svegliarsi con il profumo delizioso del pane sfornato in casa, per richiamare alla memoria i giorni in cui ci svegliavamo presto per passare la giornata in spiaggia con mio padre. Al funerale di mia madre, la mamma di un'amica mi disse: "Non piangere, devi essere forte per i tuoi fratelli". So che non lo disse con cattiveria, ma quanto è crudele dire a una giovane di 20 anni che non può piangere la morte di sua madre e in più che deve essere forte? Questa immagine della donna nera forte è molto crudele. Le persone si dimenticano che non siamo naturalmente forti. Dobbiamo esserlo perché lo Stato è negligente e violento. Restituire umanità significa anche assumere la fragilità e i dolori propri della condizione umana. Siamo rese subalterne o siamo dee? Chiedo, quando saremo umane? Mi sono chiusa molte volte in bagno a piangere perché non mi sentivo a mio agio nel farlo di fronte ad altri. Non piangere, non piangere, non fare così, avrebbero detto se mi avessero visto in quello stato. C'è un insopportabile obbligo alla felicità, un insopportabile obbligo alla forza. Generalmente le persone non si interessano a chiederci come e dove sentiamo dolore, visto che credono già di conoscere l'antidoto contro la sofferenza o credono semplicemente che non ci sia bisogno di sentirla. Una delle poche volte in cui mi sono aperto e ho parlato del mio dolore, mi sono sentita dire da una vicina che la vita è dura per chi è debole. Ero molto giovane, ma ho sempre saputo riconoscere l'indifferenza ad altre realtà e vite che non erano iniziate con odore di talco e letti comodi. La tua vita è stata dura, nonna, ma eri tutto fuorché debole. Sei riuscita a far sgorgare amore attraverso le fessure del concreto e rendere possibile un mondo senza disgusto per una bambina nera che cercava il senso della vita. Quante storie avrei potuto imparare, quanti abbracci mi sono persa. Ma soprattutto non ho conosciuto di te e di Donna Erani, mia madre, come donne, al di là del ruolo di donna, di nonna e madre. Non ho mai avuto il tempo di raccontarvi delle mie frustrazioni d'amore, di mostrarvi quanto mia figlia Tulane assomiglia a voi due. Eppure credo che la mia storia sia un modo di rivivervi, di mantenervi vive. Voglio scrivere di te, nonna, e raccontare quello che non ho avuto tempo di raccontarti prima. Voglio che molti sappiano che, al di là dell'asprezza e della durezza della vita, ci hai trasmesso insegnamenti importanti. Dopotutto, come non essere dura quando la vita è così? Come educare senza picchiare quando la vita era eredità e quotidianità? Anche nostra madre ci ha cresciuti così. Ma tu, nonna, con me hai spezzato questo ciclo, amandomi nel modo in cui mi hai amata. Per questo sono riuscita a fare lo stesso con mia figlia. Hai reso umana un'intera discendenza ed è anche mio dovere farlo. E raccontandoti un po' quello che ho appreso, mi sento umana anch'io. Non sono solo io a non aver avuto il tempo di conoscerti, ma anche tu non hai potuto conoscere me. Anche se hai sempre saputo chi ero, con queste lettere voglio farti vedere chi sono diventata. Voglio chiedere a Djamila, dopo aver letto questa sua bellissima lettera, che cosa dobbiamo pensare domani quando in giro per Milano ci dovesse capitare di incrociare una donna nera? cosa dobbiamo pensare per immedesimarci un attimo in lei e pensare allo sguardo che il mondo ha su di lei. We're gonna walk home or to work tomorrow, and we might cross a black lady. And after tonight, we're probably gonna think about what goes through her mind in a city where she might be, or in a street, or in an area where she might be the only black person. So when we see this black lady, what do you think we should think for that very brief moment in order to feel for a second what she might feel?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's important to erase all the prejudice ideas that we have, because I think it's not possible to recognize the humanity of other person if I don't understand actually the context of that group or that people have to deal. So I think empathy it's a very important concept, but for me it's not about to put myself in other places or to wear other people's shoes. I think it's impossible to do that. For example, I am a straight woman. I don't know why do I still insist on being a heterosexual woman, but I am. I don't know what is to be afraid, to feel fear of present the person who I love to my family. I don't know what is that. I don't know what is to feel afraid to kiss the person who I love in the streets. I don't know, because I was always in relationships with men. So for me to understand that reality, I had to learn to listen. Because as a heterosexual woman, I was taught to be, homophobic or to not understand other realities. And for a long time of my life, I reproduced this kind of ideas. So I had to listen to what lesbian women, gay people have to say. I have to read books. I had to understand the reality to be able to confront the oppression inside myself, to be able to break off all that ideas and to really be able to feel empathy for LGBT people. So I think empathy, it's a process. It's not about, I have empathy, I think we needed to respect everybody, and I go to my home. It needs effort. So we needed to confront our point of views. We needed to feel bad, because I felt bad when I understood a lot of things, and I said to myself, wow, I was the person who did that a lot of times. And I had to apologize myself, and I have to forgive myself, and I have to put myself in a way that I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the pain, of the suffering. So it means that I had to work on that. And until today, I have to listen, I have to read. In my books, I publish people who talk about that. It was the way that I found to be able to be part of this movement. I raised my daughter in a way, that she was taught to respect people. She has lesbian friends, and for her, it's such a common thing. For her, it's not an issue as it was for me when I was at her age. So I think the empathy is a construction. And nobody will live here today knowing what to do, because it means that today we are talking about that, but we have to do our work. We have to continue doing that. So You have to read, you have to listen, you have to confront our previous ideas. So for me, it's that. I think it's you only be able to look to that black lady as a human if you are truly, truly decided to break these cycles and to break the ideas that we have and to say, yes, I am responsible for that. So I am going to understand, I am going to read, I'm going to learn, I'm going to listen. Even if these people are bringing to me uncomfortable truths.
Questo è un momento anche per voi. C'è qualcuno che ha una domanda per Djamila? Prego.
Hi, Djamila. My name is David. Well, thank you for the speech because you were really make me feel uncomfortable, so this is fine because you helped me, I would say, reframe the concept of diversity, racism, and etc. And I understood that I was probably a little superficial on this, and I think in business, many times before solving, many people are focused on problem solving while you have to focus on problem setting because you have to understand what is the problem before and then try to solve it. And you gave me a different frame, a different view of the problem, so I thank you for that. The concept of the other, I never thought about this, is me and the other, but it's not like that, so thank you. The question, going back to business, people, I think that many people like using the jokes that you said before. For example, the black person saying, even like the job or even like to work. You know, you saw in your slide. Many people do this completely unaware. I mean, they don't understand their own prejudice. They are not aware of this. And it's difficult to explain to them. So probably you have to do actions that make them understand because, you know, you learn by doing, not by listening or by reading, basically. So my question is, in companies that you saw traveling all over the world, you saw some practice that you can share with us in other companies that try to implement a diversity program and is effective. Small action that you can start tomorrow morning to make things change. Thanks.
Well, the first thing is to design a diagnosis, to understand what's the reality of this company. So, here there are 2 women, there is no diversity at all. So it's the first thing that we needed to do, to understand. And then establish a policy, a diversity policy. I don't know, in 10 years we are going to hire women, we are going to have women in this kind of a position, black people. So it's important to frame a strategy. But after that, yes, now there is diversity in the companies. Many companies hire me and say, but there is diversity now, there are black people, women, but these people, they don't get along, it's difficult to deal with that. And I say, yes, because it's important also to create moments like that we are doing today, but in a regular basis. We have to establish, I don't know, once a month. I don't know what's the reality of the company, but it is important to have. Because many people, they reproduce because they don't know, as you said. So it's important to create the tools to people be able to discuss in a safe place. There is no stupid question. We are not here to judge anyone. We are here to learn. So I do this kind of work with some companies, and the results are being very good because people have the opportunity to talk, to learn, to understand. I've never heard about that before. I didn't know that. So, and these things only change when these people have access to this kind of discussion. So that's what I always say to the companies that I work with. And that is an example. I remember that a company told me, we hired the people from poor areas in Brazil. Okay, but these only people, they isolate themselves. We invite them to have lunch with us every day, but they don't go. What can we do? And I asked, well, maybe these people, the money that they receive, I don't know how in Italy, but in Brazil there is a benefit to people to have lunch. And I felt maybe these people, they came from a completely different reality, and maybe these people, they bring food from home because they want to save the money to be able to help to support their houses. They cannot have lunch every day in restaurants because they need this money in the end of the month. And I remember that the director looked at me, oh my God, and asked the girl, and one of these girls, and she said, yes, I have to save money. I would love to have lunch with you every day, but this money for me, it's important. So they decided to create moments when people bring food to the company to have lunch with this girl. Because sometimes it's so natural for that person. I'm going to have lunch every day, I use my benefit. But for many people, that money, it's a money to, to help in the end of the month. So that's why it's so important, this kind of discussions, this kind of reflections, this kind of invitations to reflect, to people be able to think about these issues. So in the communities that I work with, yes, that is. You have to understand what the reality is, you have to establish a diversity policy, but also you have to continue to bring these conversations to the company. Don't be afraid, I'm a very cool person. No?
Can I make another one?
Okay, nobody wants to ask.
This is personal. What do you think is the motivation of your grandmother to break up the cycle? Because you see loop and loop of things that are representing the same way. What do you think was the reason why she was able to do it?
Well, because my grandmother, she didn't have the opportunity to study, but she knew that education was very important. And so for my family, education was the most important thing. So they knew that was the only way to us to be able to transcend things in our lives. So, but also I want to, my father, as Pablo said, he was very important to me, but also my mother, because usually people in Brazil, because in Brazil I am a very well-known person, because I'm a best-selling author in Brazil, and usually people talk about my father, and yes, my father, he was very important because, you have to study, you have to be an independent woman, I don't want you to depend on men, have your own money. And it's very interesting because he was sexist with my mother, but with me and my sister, no. My daughters are going to study. But also, my mom was very important because, yes, my father was there telling me to study, but there was a person there who was fixing my hair, washing my clothes, cooking my food. And I think that's so important to value the work, this invisible work of women, because I am what I am because of my father and my mother, because she was there taking care of me and my brother and sister. She was there going to schools, to, she was there having to deal with 4 children, making all the mess possible, and she had to cook, to keep the house cleaning. So this task of my mom was very important. And also because my mom, she was a very strong woman in a way that don't make people make fun of you. You have to believe in yourself. She was very... And my father, yes, it was important. Yes, you have to study. He taught me about that. But my mom taught me about courage. I could have the knowledge, but not the courage. When you are a black woman, you need both. So my mom was very important to me in this way. So this combination of all these things were important to me to be who I am. think everybody's thinking and dealing with the uncomfortable truth. It's okay.
Do you know what I'm thinking? Is I don't know where I am. That means I think I have a lot of empathy for whoever person, but maybe is my mental block. So I'm thinking, okay, but where I am in the group of people you describe. The only thing I also think that, you know, we were talking about Obama, and Obama has my age. And imagine there is Obama here in front of me. So it's probably clever than me, is better fit than me, probably is also better looking than me. So in all honesty, if somebody would say, okay, who do you choose, Marco or Obama, probably I would accept that they choose Obama. So I think I am very, how can I say, open to diversity. But it's also true that if I look at our company, we have many women. I don't remember now, 80% of the persons are women. I think we have also gays, and we have only a couple of black persons. So I said, oh, maybe I am in the group of people that is, you know, saying, well, but we don't have any problem because we have 2 black people in the company. So if you want to know where, what I'm thinking, I don't know where I am. So thank you very much for your talks, because now I will drive home and I will think, okay, where I am, but also what I should do in order to have a company who includes persons. Maybe I have to ask our HR, okay, whenever we open a position, you have to, and about the quota, no? You have to say, okay, I would like my dear customer, Mrs. Maria Teresa, who when she opened a position, she says, I want an Italian, an extra woman, and then for us it's difficult to find those kind of people, but okay, at least we try. So to make it short, thank you very much, because personally I will have to think where I am. This is what I wanted to tell you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed listening to that. Yes. Thank you.
Ok, allora rientro io per le conclusioni, non prima di chiedervi un applauso per Djamila. Thank you very much, Djamila, amazing. Un applauso per Pablo, che è stato... E 2 parole di conclusione, in realtà abbiamo detto tutto, c'è pochissimo da aggiungere. Mi riaggancio all'inizio e abbiamo detto che veniamo un po' da una cultura che stiamo cercando un po' di guardare. Oggi abbiamo fatto questo esperimento di guardare indietro per guardare al futuro, e se pensiamo al futuro il tema della cultura razzista non sarà, credo, sufficiente definirci non razzisti, ma definirci antirazzisti, quindi, come dire, richiede un'attivazione come differenza. E il tema dell'inclusione è un tema che va mantenuto vivo e che noi riteniamo richieda un po' di militanza. Guardare indietro vuol dire provare a capire come il mondo può evolvere, se poi adesso senza tematiche politiche, ma come di foto e di cultura, guardiamo al mondo e guardiamo al paese. Questo tema di inclusione per l'Italia sarà una sfida nei prossimi anni, sarà una sfida il tema dell'inclusione degli immigrati che devono arrivare per 1000 motivi. Primo, quello demografico, e quindi anche buone pratiche aziendali che si possono consumare in fretta, quindi fondamentale i DNA, i processi, ma fondamentale che vadano mantenuti vivi e che poi diventino in realtà fatti e quotidianità, e che non diventino più un argomento di di analisi e discussione. Quindi inclusione, poi torniamo al coraggio e all'audacia di cui abbiamo parlato all'inizio, riteniamo di averlo approfondito, poi ci fermiamo anche tutti per l'aperitivo e il light dinner. Grazie mille a voi per esserci stati e ci vediamo alla prossima serata dei Future Talk. Buon proseguimento, grazie.